Coming up on Good Journeys.
By the time we get to the end of the interview, 40 minutes later, she basically says, I don't know how you two have done this on your own, and comes and gives us a hug and a kiss.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's probably, you know, one of the defining moments where I think we must be doing something right.
Welcome to Good Journeys with Ben Veal, a place to reflect back on the lessons learned from the trails travelled by some truly incredible people. Welcome to an extremely special episode of Good Journeys, and the reason it's special is because I'm joined by not one, but two brilliant guests. Anthony and Claire Bueno are the brother and sister creative force behind the global hit documentary Cleanin Up the Town, Remembering Ghostbusters, and its hotly anticipated sequel, Too Hot to Handle. Today, we're going to be talking about the incredible roads travelled to bring these remarkable projects to life. I hope this conversation inspires you to make your dreams a reality and to follow your passion. Anthony, Claire, thank you both for joining me today. How are you?
Hello, Ben. Lovely to see you. Thank you for having us.
Fine and dandy as well.
We are well.
Fantastic. Well, look, I mean, we connected a good while back now after I watched and fell in love with, Cleaning Up the Town. Here it is. Remembering Ghostbusters. Obviously, we all adore this movie. It's formative for our childhoods. Where did your love of Ghostbusters begin? Over to you, Claire, first, I think. Let's start with you.
Is that because I'm the oldest and look the oldest sibling?
I'm not answering that. Go on.
It did start with me. It was the first film I was allowed to go and see without parental supervision. So very much a formative film. And I could go with my friends. And, you know, I even remember what I was wearing. It was a turquoise shirt, not dissimilar to the check shirt you've got on, Ben. And with my pegs, I was very, very fashionable. Ready! Just remember sitting in the cinema, jumping out of my skin at the Library Ghost, and then kind of like going, hope nobody saw me, you know, and then laughing at myself because I was so scared. But, you know, it really did have a lasting impression on me. And I've kind of thought back and, you know, in retrospect, you know, only recently to think no other film has had an impact on me in the cinema like that did. And, you know, obviously at the time, not even knowing that it was going to be such a big part of my life. But then I came home and I passed the bug on to Anthony, didn't I?
That is essentially how it worked. Because I'd seen clips, and I think it's probably Taxi Cab Ghost. I'm trying to think. And it was probably was on top of the pops because of Ghostbusters was... the song Ghostbusters had been out in the UK before the film hit. And I thought, well, I don't know about this. It looks a bit too scary. And I was freaked out by films. It was like horror films and stuff. Even like the Killer Ants thing. The Killer Ants one was the one that did me. So it was about 80, it must have been 85 that I finally went to see it. I remember Stephen Boston was the first lad in our class that actually went to see Ghostbusters. But that was it. You know, once you cannot deny the film. Once you'd seen it, and it was just everything that you wanted, certainly at that era, you know, post Star Wars and Empire and Jedi, and just like you've got bendy lasers and the ghosts and the visual effects and the special effects and all that. So I was, you know, you're just swept away by it, and you just become obsessed, as you do. I was only 10 years old, so, you know, you do become very obsessed by these things. And I think that is the sweet spot for kids. You know, it just seems to be like around about that age is when everyone becomes kind of obsessed with something. And that's what it was. It just, and yeah, just even to this day. And like throughout my life, it was always, you know, you get on with different things, you like different things, but Ghostbusters has always been there for me. Mm-hmm. And even was at film school and first asked about, you know, what's your favorite films? And all the cool kids are trying to say Tarantino or some other, you know, they're trying to name some kind of French director. And I'm just like, yeah, Ghostbusters. Thanks very much. And they're yeah, it's Ghostbusters because it's awesome.
It was a perfect film, isn't it? 90 minutes long, tells a perfect story, clear beginning, clear middle, clear end, character arcs, backstories, you know, really well-defined characters. There's jeopardy, there's resolution at the end. Yeah. There's a giant marshmallow man. Like, seriously, what's not to love?
I know
Exactly.
exactly, and we've said time and time again. Well, I remember you saying to me that each scene serves the trajectory of the story. It doesn't linger. Every scene says something.
Yeah, it's not there just because it's kind of funny
Yeah.
or whatever. It's everything does move that film along the way that it needs to, and as a lot of films sort of like did back then, they just the scripts were so tight.
Mm.
You didn't. I mean, you didn't know the characters until you sat watching it. Whereas you start to become a bit more indulgent when you're aware of who they are or what the situation is, and which does happen in a lot of films, especially these days. Sometimes it just gets a little bit too drawn out.
Yeah.
Whereas it's just tight.
Mm.
It doesn't stay any longer than it needs to. They resolve it. It ends. And nothing against the Lord of the Rings and like the multiple endings in Return of the King, because it works very well for that film. But you do get that a lot in films where things just draw out. It's like this should have ended. There's something refreshing when you see like some of the old 80s films
Mm.
and they just, especially the comedies, and they just, I actually watched, what did I watch the other night? I hadn't seen it for years. Money Pit. We're doing a few house renovations as well. So it's just like, yeah, that sounds about right. And it's just, some of it's just like, some of it hasn't aged as well. And other bits, it's just like, yes, it's all right. This is quite funny in places. And again, you get to the point, it ends, done. Credits
Yeah.
roll, and away you go. So yeah, oh, just like you cannot beat the era that was the 80s for films.
No, and nostalgia is such a powerful thing, and I think in the last 4 or 5 years we've seen this real drawing towards nostalgia for kind of our age group, and looking back in the 80s and all the things that were popular then. But when you made the decision to make a film about Ghostbusters, it wasn't really in the popular zeitgeist, was it? It'd been a long time really since Ghostbusters 2 and the cartoons, and there was no potential really for there to be another one. It was a slightly dormant franchise,
It
wasn't it, at
was.
the time that you so what was it that drew you, this is in the mid 2000s, I believe it was around about 2007 that you got underway with your first movie. Why did you feel there was a gap in the market to make a Ghostbusters movie, and why did you feel that you two, brother and sister from the UK, were the ones to tell the story of this
We're
giant
not.
American movie?
Geniuses.
We're
You can
bonkers.
say geniuses because we're very humble about such
Of
things.
course.
No, the word gets bandied about quite a
Yeah,
lot these days, but every now and again we need to bring it back to what it really means.
of course.
It's interesting now, being like where we are now in the mid like 2020s, and
Yeah.
back then but there wasn't a lot of that kind of going on, but there were windows. I had a friend who did one about the Psycho films, and it was just like the boom of DVDs had kind of gone in terms of like when you started getting DVDs and they were bashing out these great menus and all this content,
Mm.
and then there was like no money in it. And my favorite doc from that kind of era was the Blade Runner documentary, Dangerous Days. It's still now, I think that's like 4 hours long or something. And I haven't seen it for a while, but I loved it. Just like thinking, God, what you can do when you've got studio backing and the resources behind you to be able to do something like this. And we didn't have any of those things.
Yeah, we
So
know.
it was
We
going to be a
really did
curious
not.
venture. And there was a lot of, I know we were thinking about like what if Sony, decided to take us under our wing and all that kind of stuff. But it's like most things, you just kind of you were already doing the red carpet stuff at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah, I was a red carpet reporter.
And we kicked around about doing like DVD extras for
Yeah.
stuff. And then I met someone called Paul, and he talked to me about doing an American Werewolf in London documentary. And I just thought, that'd be quite interesting. But, the DVDs had extra features on the American Werewolf disc as well as Ghostbusters. So I just didn't know what we could really do. And then he used the example of Fear of God. I think it's Mark Commode. Exorcist.
Yeah,
I think it's Mark Commode.
Yeah, it is.
It says this is what I'm kind of thinking of, this kind of look and style and type of thing, and how it can be just this really fleshed out documentary, full on doc about it. And you're like, right, okay, now I get it. Now it's not going to be just like a 20 minutes or so on a DVD. I don't remember if it was going out. I don't know if I should say it or not, but I'm going to. But it's like that was a documentary. Was it? I say BritDocs. I could be wrong about that, but there was a company that did a lot of documentaries. I remember us reaching out to get funding, and I think their response was like, wish you best of luck, but who on earth wants to see a documentary about an American Werewolf in London? And it's like, show you. And and that's kind of where it started. And once you start that kind of, once you start the journey, the good journey, you could say, um, and when you're meeting, filmmakers and stars, or whatever, that have been in your favorite films, and you're doing these deep dives about the various things that go on set, and it is quite an intoxicating environment. All of a sudden, you're learning about all this stuff firsthand.
Yeah.
I remember we interviewed Terry Gilliam once, and he was
Yeah.
one of my influences. And we're sat and we're chatting with him, like having a random conversation about IMDb, and you're thinking, oh my God. And in your head, your exterior you're trying to be cool, but inside, like your inner self is going, oh God.
Yeah.
It was just so it's a really very privileged situation to be in. So, and I think we just, certainly in terms of Ghostbusters, like you said, it was, it was like a dead franchise. There
Yeah.
may have been developing the game when we'd started. I don't think the game had come out about
No,
that
I think they
point.
were talking about it because those were questions that we were asking.
Yeah, we were at one point. Yeah,
Well, you've obviously have to explore the commercial viability of this, don't you? Because you're entering into this as it's all very well that you're doing something that's grounded in something you loved as a child, so these are films you adored as a child, but also you're filmmakers
Yeah.
and you want to create something that's both going to capture the imagination of fans, but also is going to be a successful endeavor if you're going to launch this as an independent, production. So I guess were there concerns to you going in, but actually, if we are to do this, is there going to be an audience there, or did you know in your heart, but actually that Ghostbusters audience was so loyal that if you produced something that was of a certain quality and did the film justice, that it would succeed in its own merit?
Oh, gosh, that's a really good question, and I'm not sure we necessarily know the answer to that. I think uh, first and foremost, like with my interviewing skills and organizational skills and Anthony's skills behind the camera, with editing as well as being a camera operator, we could pool our resources together because we work as brother and sister to each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we enjoy working together. We're lucky to have a good, I mean, we've had our ups and downs as well,
yeah,
but but on the whole, we get on very well. I think you're if I correct me if I'm wrong, but you always felt that you just wanted to tell the story of how Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 was made.
yeah,
And there was never really anything in depth with all the, we see there's, your kind of key players like your Dan Aykroyds, Ivan Reitman, Harold Ramis at the time that would talk about, Ghostbusters on Blu-ray extras and DVD extras and things
yeah,
like
yeah,
that. But there was nothing, nitty gritty like your Dangerous Days. And I think you just felt that you were able to tell this story of how it was made in the most complete, unfiltered way.
yeah. Because I mean, it's like, because I mean, it was a good question because it's like we didn't know.
No.
Because it had been, I mean, people talk about it, and then when we started to go to a couple of Comic Cons and seeing, people that hadn't even weren't even born, even when the cartoons came out, let alone the first one or the second one. So, and they're dressing up as Ghostbusters and thinking there's got to be something in it.
Mm.
And but this was the thing that I think most companies had fallen out of love with, that kind of like, let's make a real. I think that has kind of made a bit more of a resurgence. There are these like certain companies out there now that are making these really kind of like, fleshed out box sets of sort of like some cult classics and beyond. So you either get your vanilla release or you get something that's actually quite substantial, and there's
Mm.
no middle ground. But so there is that passion for it, I think that's the industry in
Yeah.
general, cinema certainly, is that there's certain things. There's always the argument with streaming and stuff, but I think there's now, cinema, it keeps going by the people who are passionate about film and cinema.
Yeah.
And much like with the doc, it's, there are people out there that are passionate, not just about Ghostbusters, but about filmmaking
Mm.
and
Mm.
about the intricacies. And you're talking about an era that even at that point when we started was already, dying, is evolving. It's
Yeah.
beyond, the photochemical 35 mm. I mean, 35 mm was still a thing at that point, as was the 35 mm projection. But we were on the couple. I mean, if it weren't for digital, we wouldn't have been able to go and afford to be able to go and
Yeah.
do
That's
this.
way.
Yeah.
but always in our minds, it was like, well, if we go away and we do, and we just thought it would be one, maybe two trips to the US to do some of the interviews. But you just think, well, how much you spend if you're going on holiday? If we're going to go to Disneyland, we probably spent three times more. So you just think, and this is like going over, and and it's only us two. It's not like we've got a nice crew and all our equipment is in nice big, I can't remember the name of the cases that are all that big chunky plastic cases and off you.
Yeah.
And it's all protected now where, okay, get the camera in the backpack and you have that because if they lose it and they put it in the hold because that's happened before. So it's like, okay, so you're kind of constantly trying to configure luggage with lights, cameras and all the rest of it, but be compact enough to go and do this stuff. But, you don't want to turn up with just sort of like, your phone, which you couldn't have done at that time. Camera phones were very limited, but, with like a little handy cam and stuff, you wanted to look a professional outfit, even though it's only two of you. But you'd still think, well, you're still not spending as much as we would have done on holiday. So that's how you kind of justified the costs.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because and you've done a beautiful job, Claire, in your very giant book that supports the documentary, because you see this kind of polished documentary. And, I certainly did, not knowing your story, not knowing who you were. I just watched this documentary because I discovered there was a Ghostbusters documentary. And I was blown away by it. I was blown away by the production values. I assumed it was made by one of the big multinationals, or it was made by Sony. It took me it was only when I really got to the end of it when I realized it was a fully independent production, and that a large part of it was because you had managed to galvanize this kind of global fan base of Ghostbusters, and you managed to get this community behind you to support this project as well. Talk me through how you actually got this to life, really, such a giant project with all the investment that was involved in it and everything that went into it. How did you manage to tap into all of the fans within this subculture?
Well, I suppose it starts with for the first 8 years, we completely self-funded the film. We literally would work, pool our, like saving for your holidays, earn our money, and then go out, and it would support the trip. And while it's just us two, we weren't taking a wage from it or anything like that. We literally, it was just our wages covered our expenses, isn't it? And then we got to a point where I can't remember how many recessions we had during the filming of the doc in total, but there was a particular recession, and we just literally ran out of money. And we never wanted external investment because we wanted to be able to tell an honest story from our point of view. And if we brought on other producers to invest money, fair enough, it's their money. They will want an opinion in how it turns out. And we were not prepared to relinquish creative control. I think that is ultimately it, isn't it?
And also, we didn't know where we were going to stand legally with, it is a licensed product. And that's, that was always kind of like rattling around. And it's not the people that didn't come along say, well, we'd like to, it's like, we don't know where we're going to stand. If it's just us two, we can manage it. But if you start getting other people involved, it gets complicated. So, and there were, Anthony Zart, who did our poster and stuff, he was on board from, we set up the Facebook page, so that was all how we got the word out. It was the good old social media, and he just wanted to help, and we just have been friends ever since. And he's done all, did the book, did the Blu-ray, and he'll be doing Too Hot to Handle stuff as well. So there was a lot of good stuff that came from it, but it was that was it. It got to that point, and then it was, and we'd heard about Kickstarter, and I'd mentioned it to you a couple of times, and it was just like always, well, if we're not going to give away control over something we've slogged over for 8 years. And then when you look into it, okay, it doesn't really work like that. And really, all you are doing is putting into a fund, but it's a whole other animal, the Kickstarter thing. Certainly it's not something we'd entertain doing again if we can help it or avoid it, because it is a full-time job. And, and that was mainly Claire dealing with all of that at that point in time. So that was...
Going back to my organisational skills.
Organisational skills. Doing the odd socials, getting out there, but it's just like every day. And we've had many conversations with various other people and in various levels of the industry that did the same thing. And they all say the same thing. It's a full-time job.
It is a customer service. Even Alex Winter, I spoke to him because he had a Kickstarter for his Zappa documentary. I think he was the highest grossing Kickstarter of all time for a documentary. And he said exactly the same. It is a full-time job because if you're dealing, say, with one producer, the development of your film is just you're having a conversation with one other person other than us, obviously. But when you're dealing with, you know, 700, 1,000 people who have all got their own questions and own demands, and I'm funding this film and they've put £10 in, you know, your £10 is very much appreciated, but we've put our whole life savings into this.
Yeah.
And so managing expectation, I mean, yeah, it becomes a big job, customer service, managing expectations, and it became very complicated. So I certainly don't regret the Kickstarter because, again, like you said, Ben, it helped tap into the community and it brings you all together. But you can never say never, but it would be, oh gosh,
As many pluses there are.
yeah.
And 90, odd 5% of the people are perfectly fine.
We're fantastic, yeah.
And then, but you've got those other ones that aren't. I demand and on all this kind of stuff.
I'm going to take you to court.
Oh yeah. I'm going to, as soon as I get the film, I'm going to leak it online.
Yeah.
All this kind of stuff. It's like, and it was, and you just think that thing, and then there is a point afterwards you're thinking, could we have actually just not, and actually just waited longer? I mean, I think we were aware that was definitely making the 2016 film by that point. So there was this danger of like, great Ghostbusters is back in that kind of like the public arena.
Yeah.
But is it going to just be kind of like shoved to one side? Because that's the old Ghostbusters. Now we've got the new one. Obviously that didn't happen. But there was that kind of like, we got to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah, that's true.
Thumbs up things. So it's very... you're constant, and hindsight is 2020 and all that, and you sit there and think, well, maybe we could have like generated the funds a different way, but you as soon as you get money involved, you think you're solving one problem, and all you're doing is it just evolves into a completely different set of problems.
Yeah,
I mean, did you still manage to have you managed to retain your love for Ghostbusters?
Oh gosh,
throughout all of this?
I'd say even more.
Because we'll sit, and it was on just the other night. It's on Sky. Whenever it's on Sky, I say, great, and we'll flick it on. And you do watch it with different eyes, like, I know they did that. I know that, or you just switch all that off and you just enjoy it for the film.
Just enjoy it, exactly.
Well,
one thing you mentioned, Claire, is about your interviewing. So you've done a lot of red carpet interviews. You've interviewed many A-listers over time, but obviously that's a very different kind of beast, this kind of press junket, or you might get an opportunity for a question potentially. When it came to doing this film, one of the things that I loved, especially reading your book, was how you get the impression in the film that you two have these very, really rich relationships and friendships with a lot of the people you're speaking to, very big name people. The reality is lots of these interviews that you did with people like Dan Aykroyd and Ivan Reitman and Sigourney Weaver, you got a very, very, very small period of time to actually, for everything that's involved in setup and filming and interviewing. You did an incredible job in really kind of getting some beautiful responses from them. It's very heartfelt responses when you actually had very little time with them. How much did being a celebrity interviewer help you to kind of get straight to the heart of like, right, I've got half an hour of Sigourney Weaver, what do I need? But also still building rapport at the same time.
Yes, well, I think it all starts with I actually genuinely care. So I think as actors, they read body language, so they know when you're being sincere or insincere. You can't fake that. But one of the tools for me that is really, really important as an interviewer is your ability to listen. It's not necessarily your ability to talk, even though I can talk. And so, I'd like to think as well that I think they just bought into us too, didn't they?
Yes.
I mean, when you're on the red carpet, it's very sort of quick fire. You've got not milliseconds, but you've got, a couple of minutes with, somebody like Tom Cruise. You'll have one question, but he speaks to everybody and he is phenomenal. And what's amazing about him in that moment, it's you and him. And that you can't beat that. I mean, it is addictive. Whereas, there are some red carpets where you don't have that individual time, and they'll group the journalists together. We all have a place, positioned strategically behind a barrier. But sometimes maybe, somebody like, I don't know, Brad Pitt or Zendaya will come up, and you're all grouped. So it's your job to get their attention. And I would do that by just calling their name, and then people respond to their name, funnily enough. So once you've got their attention and you've locked eye contact, then you're away, at the races, but you need to keep your question very short. In the more long form interview, the kind of like 40 minutes we had with Sigourney, pretty much the
Yeah.
same with Ivan and Dan, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Harold Ramis, we had all afternoon, and he kept putting people off to talk to us. I mean, and apologizing, would you believe, for talking too much. You just can't make these stories up. It starts with asking questions that some thought has been put into them.
Yeah.
There are but I would like to think it was how we came across, with sincerity. We genuinely care about the IP. We care about the people, by the way, as well. That is very important. You know, we don't just sit down and interview them without any kind of care or diligence. Sigourney Weaver, for example, when she came, people that were in Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, we'd split the interview almost in two, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
We'd do Ghostbusters, and then I would use that opportunity to go, do you want to have a rest? Do you want to have a break? And then come back and then start the Ghostbusters 2. So I think they could see that we're not just there to sort of fire questions.
Yeah.
We're there because we sincerely actually care about
Yeah,
what we're
exactly.
doing
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
process and them. And that
Yeah,
comes with who you
and
are,
we, and we,
doesn't
and
it?
we, it was always, it's always just being professional.
Yes,
You know,
yeah.
you've got obviously got the inner 10-year-old sort of like ready to explode at any moment, but just like you're doing your best, and it was just us two most, yeah, no, all the time. I think when we're doing the interviews.
It was, yeah, just a
So,
thing.
and you're there, so you're setting up lights and you're running around, and it's, and it's a lot to do really. And it's, it would have been nice to have one or two other people there just to help with either lights.
Mm,
Sound is something I wish I'd done a lot better with, but you work to your
mm.
strengths, I suppose, and to the situation like you do with anything. It's like,
Yeah.
but they could see that, and the
Mm,
fact that we are just us two, like tanning the land, literally driving in some cases from one side of the US to the other, and
yeah.
not just like along up and down and along. It's like, which is great, which is all a part of the fun as far as I'm concerned. That is part of that journey, another good journey. But this was, I think that's what they wanted,
Yeah.
but some of them
And
are just
they're
like
just
Richard
lovely
and
people.
Richard and Terry. That we were talking with them for, I think it was like 4 hours before we even, it was like, we better set the camera up now, because they was so warm, and we
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
chatting away,
Yeah.
and Richard's place, I don't think he's got it anymore. He had a office in Santa Monica,
Yeah.
and you go in and he's got bits and bobs from the various films. He had a Stay Puffed Head. I think we got it in the intro. It's like Plaster of Paris thing. I think he had a Terror Dog head on the wall. He had stuff from Die Hard. I remember going to the loot. He had a massive collection of cameras and old, and maybe they're either no, they weren't projection. It was, he had a Technicolor camera, which is quite a specific kind of, because it had three strips for red, green, blue.
Yeah.
And that's a Technicolor one. And I remember he had that there, but I looked in and he had a lightsaber in his cabinet. And I'm like,
Wow.
what? It's a lightsaber. So and they're just like, yeah, it's all that stuff. And we had such a laugh with them. And then
Yeah.
we did the interview, which went on for ages. And then I think it only ended because I think he had a poker game was one I had to go to. It was just, but that was
But
it.
but
It's
but like Sigourney Weaver, for instance, and I talk about the story in the book. When she first sits down, I'm trying to make small talk while Anthony finishes, kind of the finalizing of the lights and whatever, and she doesn't really want to make small talk, and which is fair enough because she is, Sigourney Weaver. And then by the time we get to the end of the interview, 40 minutes later, she basically says, I don't know how you two have done this on your own, and comes and gives us a hug and a kiss.
yeah,
I mean, And that's probably, one of the defining moments where I think we must be doing something right, because these people don't suffer fools gladly, and they have opened up their hearts to us,
Yeah,
and let us in. And Sigourney Weaver continued to be, and continues to be, a great support. I
yeah,
mean, we're not best friends. We're not, I'm not on speed dial to at all, but we have kept in touch over the years, haven't
yeah,
we? So um it's remarkable, really,
yeah, yeah,
Ben.
yeah.
And it is remarkable, and I want to play that back to both of you. I'm glad you're saying that, because this really has been the epitome of a good journey you've been on. I mean, do you have an idea of how many trips you've made to the States, how many thousands of miles you've covered? Like, where are we at all these years on?
That'd be really good. That's really we
Yeah,
should do when we've done the New York to LA trip twice,
yeah.
but that was via the first time. No, hang on. The first, no, it was not. We went north to the borders of Canada, Ohio, down as far as Florida, then along. We went to um, New Orleans. It's like, oh, New Orleans, like Interview with the Vampire. Oh, yeah, this is great. And there was some big music thing going on there, and there was nowhere,
So
nowhere.
yeah.
So we had a little drive around some of the streets and stuff,
Yeah.
but we had to drive probably about an hour outside of New Orleans and stopped in this place which was like The Shining, quite a difference from what we were expecting. It had a grand sort of like entrance, but then you just went at the back and it was like chalets. And it was really like run down. It was very bizarre. And then we went all the way back up to Arizona, and then ended up going like down to LA and via Vegas. And that was that trip. And then the second trip,
I don't know.
was that when we went?
We've done countless trips to America. I can't even remember. It's got
That's
to
when
be
we
at
went. I
least.
think we went further. We went all like the North Peninsula and
Oh,
then
right.
down. I think that might be. We
Oh,
really have gone, and then we've,
yeah, we have
LA,
literally.
San Francisco, LA, Oregon, down,
Yeah.
Arizona.
It's been part of
Arizona.
the adventure as well, going to see parts of America that you would never normally see if you were just a general and tourist. And that's been part of the law for us as well, too. Or the lure, sorry, I should pronounce that better. Being able to see a part of a country that you would never know otherwise. I mean, we've been kind of naive in our approach to it all, but always with a sense of professionalism, and even through the kind of the hardest and darkest times, it taking 12 years just to make Clean Up the Town, there was never a point where we were never not going to complete.
Yeah,
Mm.
We owed it to everybody
yeah,
that
we owed
that
it to
we,
ourselves, the
yeah,
interviews. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
we do because it just was, I never traveled much when I was a kid and things, so it was always because we're half Spanish, so it was always having to go to Spain, whether we liked it or not. But you go so I wasn't overly keen on traveling too much. Claire had done a lot of traveling, and the first time I went to the States was to New York. It was my girlfriend at the time, Heidi, and we wanted to go away. We'd been together a short time, but not very long. And it was like, and thankfully she also liked Star Wars. And at the time, it was like, well, the Phantom Menace is coming out in May, and we won't get it till June. So why don't we go over and see it before? So that's what we did. Went to New York, and it was like we only for a weekend, but it was like a tester to see what it was going to be like. And we was knackered. It was a great time. Went to the Ziegfeld, which I don't think exists anymore. Saw an American audience respond to a film, which was unlike a UK audience. They were right in it, and it's like, yeah, when we go over and do these trips, whatever, what a great way to go and travel.
Yeah.
I'm not a great tourist, I think is essentially it. So I'm better to go when I've,
Live the experience.
yeah,
Yeah.
you've got something to do. Great. Well, we can go and do that and enjoy
Yeah.
it at the same time.
Have a
And that was it.
purpose.
And I was really, looking forward to going to the PC on the PCH
Oh, yeah.
when we went to
Pacific
LA.
Coast Highway. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we've gone to San Francisco. Friends say, yeah, go with the PCH. I was like, yeah, I know. You see it in like tons of films, in inner space and all that kind of stuff. Oh, yeah, I'd love to go that way. And for love nor money, we could not get on it. And we
Oh.
got on roads where you could see it, but not actually on it. And our friend to this day finds it hilarious. And now we've been back since. It's like, oh, you go there. And it's like, it's dead easy. But of course, we didn't go that way. We just didn't know the way. And that was it. We didn't have a decent sat nav was still kind of fairly
In its
rudimentary.
infancy, yeah.
So that was it, because we always wanted to go to
The Lost Boys.
Lost Boys.
Santa Clara
Santa Clara is the actual place.
is the place. So, oh gosh, we did go there in the end, didn't we?
We
But
have been
anyway,
there since.
yeah.
But at the time, it was like, yeah, we could go, and didn't. And we went to San Francisco, and we had a great time there, and went to ILM and Pixar and all that.
Yeah.
But and that is it again.
That's
That,
it,
you know,
yeah.
you never know. It was even at that time, we was stopping in a travel lodge, which appears in Prison Break. One of the seasons of Prison Break, it appears in that. And we stopped in that travel lodge, which again doesn't exist, and phoned up. We was like, how do we get hold of Dennis Muir? And there was no direct contact. It's like, see if we can get hold of him. It's like, well, might as well phone ILM, and you just phone them up. It's like, I hate talking on the phone. So that was Claire's
job.
Claire's job, and she just phoned up. She goes, "Go talk to. Is it possible to contact or talk to Dennis Muir?" Yeah, we'll just put you through. Dennis. Oh, hello. And then it was just like, and then
It was literally like that.
it was so weird. And then it was only a few days later, we go up there, we go to ILM in the morning, and then Pixar in the afternoon to interview Harley Jessup, and it was just like,
it's bonkers.
it was just, yeah.
We've even
I think you've hit the nail on the head, because you described it as kind of naive professionalism.
yeah.
And I think that's what's lovely about what comes through from these projects, and from speaking with you as I have done many times now, is you know, you got incredible access to almost everyone that's involved in both of these films. Yet it's I get the sense that kind of happened because people actually wanted to do it, because they liked the fact that, you know, this independent brother and sister who loved what they'd produced all these years ago were paying homage to it in a really respectful way. And I think people can sense that when you're not just doing it for money, but you're actually doing it for genuine passion. I mean, in all the conversations you had and all the miles you've clocked up and everything you've done, it's the one thing that stands out to you as like your proudest moment with making these films.
I think the standing on the platform of the IMAX, the BFI IMAX, and having the European premiere where, you know, Tom Cruise and Steven Spielberg have their premieres, and having obviously been a red carpet reporter, and Anthony and I had done premiere scene where we reported on the red carpet for a decade. So we also knew that there are very few documentaries that have a premiere at the IMAX, and there we're stood through everything that we'd been through, and we didn't realize at the time that we were going to go through another adversity. At this point, we're at the kind of pinnacle of, like, we know we'd earned our right to be stood there because we'd already been through a lot, introducing our film on the stage to, you know, an audience. There was a lot of people there, wasn't it? I wouldn't say it was packed out, but it was pretty full.
Yeah.
And I think that was definitely a very proud moment to go, God, we actually did it, you know, through everything, you know, every problem we overcame. You know, I always kind of liken myself to a weeble wobble. You might knock me, but I don't fall down. I just sort of bounce back up. And I think that's been what it's been like for both of us, really. And that was for me was
I'd say it was exactly that, because it's just not. And again, there was never a point where we knew we wouldn't finish it, but whatever that product's going to be at the end, you never know what that's really going to be. You can try hard and want it to be the best thing you can, but you know, everyone goes out there to try and do that, and not everything really turns out as well as you'd hoped. And it really did become far more than something. I always thought it would just be like, you know, on a DVD extra or something like that. And Claire was thinking about cinema and all that. It's like, it's not that kind of film. It's, you know, people aren't going to go to cinemas and watch this. And then it turns out that, but there we were on the biggest screen, I think in Europe. At least it was at the time. And it was just, and even now, it took me quite a few days after. I just thought that. And even, it was just like that. I know they've said this is going to happen, but I don't think this is the IMAX. And no, that's not really going to happen at all. So, and then there we were. And I'm not very good at I can talk for England, but standing up in front of a group of people to give some kind of speech or something like that's a different thing altogether.
You don't like having attention.
No, I don't. I'm not. It's just not my comfort zone. I'm very much a behind the camera person. I'm not kind of in front. So it really was something else to kind of be stood there and think, this is very I don't know. It's even now thinking
Yeah.
about it, it's just like that's what we've been able to achieve. That's something.
Yeah. And you know
And then of course you're premiering it to, this 130-minute long film,
yeah,
which you've poured 10 plus years into,
yeah, yeah.
premiering it into a, a packed crowd. Very, I'm sure there's a lot of nerves go into that. What was it like when, the end credits rolled?
Oh
Because
God.
presumably you're sitting there thinking throughout all of this, we love this film, but is the
Yeah.
audience actually going to love what we've done?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was, I'll tell you what, that was, I'll never forget that actually. I'm glad you've sort of picked up on that, Ben. It was the credits rolled to the end and there was absolute silence. And then it felt like forever. And then all of a sudden there was this rapturous applause. And it just felt like people just didn't want it to end. And it was, and then everybody kept coming up to us, didn't they, and
yeah,
thanking us. And it was just, and I mean it in a non-egotistical way at all. It was just really overwhelming because what, and when premiered, we had the world premiere in Canada, which is a whole kind of other story that probably for another sort of podcast, whatever. But what we found when we sat with the audience then was that we just looked at each other, didn't we? And we went, we haven't just made something good, we've actually made something very special.
Mm.
And this has resonated with people. It's touching people. You could hear their response, their gasps, their, in more kind of dramatic moments, their laughs in the funny moments. But while we are sort of talking about that, we couldn't have achieved that without Anthony's art,
yeah,
Derek Osborne, who were the core four of us. Then there was Jamie and Dave from Jamie and Midi D who did the soundtrack. There was a core unit of us. Ollie as well that did the
yeah. They
animation
did
as
that
well.
film shed
Yeah,
and
and
his
Ben Veal that did the sound design. There was just a very core few members of us that were able to produce something on that professional level.
yeah. And that, yeah, because it was, I mean, and the first time you sit and watch anything, certainly on a big screen, you can't sit and just relax and enjoy. You're constantly aware of everybody else
Yeah.
and what their reactions are, and you're looking at it trying to see if there's anything you've missed, like mistakes or and it goes through a quality check, it goes through a QC, and it went through several, but you're still there thinking, but what if I spot this, that, and I knew that, and so you can't. It's really difficult to kind of just relax and enjoy because you're just on high alert, and it's
Mm.
just you can only relax when it's kind of over, and then you sort of like see how people react to it, which thankfully they reacted really well. And I remember when we was going to originally was going to screen it at Fan Fest. It was like a Ghostbusters event in the summer of 2019 and on the Sony lot. And that was a whole other stress. And it wasn't a lot of fun. I mean, you could only enjoy it once your allotted time was over. And then it's like, okay, the rest of the event's going on now, we'll get on with it. But that was really stressful and mainly because you just think people are going to watch this. And at that point, we'd had the 2016 film. So you knew that people aren't exactly kind. If they don't like something, they're not backwards, they're
Yeah.
forwards.
Yeah.
So you got, oh God, how's this going to go? But we only showed a little bit of the doc at that particular stage. But when we did the Canada thing and the IMAX thing was, IMAX is like that's
Oh
just
God,
the
it was
next level.
just,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're nervous, but thankfully it all went
Oh, it
through,
was
and
amazing.
yeah, it's always been well received, which is
Yeah.
lovely.
And it is remarkable. I mean, the thing that I always love to kind of end these conversations on is looking at the lessons people have learned from journeys. And of course, this journey you've been on, we're talking about the highs here of, premiering at the IMAX and showing your film in Calgary at Calgary Film Festivals, and obviously, getting the opportunity to capture on film, these intimate moments with, people like the great Ivan Reitman and how Ramus and people that we loved and who were so part of this incredible Ghostbusters franchise that are no longer with us. You've done some remarkable things. Now you've got a book, Claire, that's
Yeah.
selling out at the BFI London. Like
I
you're
know.
on.
I know. Can you believe that?
Well, I can believe it because it's a fantastic book and it's a fantastic film, so I can believe it. I think the thing for me that I'd love to kind of close with today is what are some of the lessons learned? You said Anthony that hindsight is 2020. Obviously, you've been on one heck of a journey. You're still on a journey developing Too Hot to Handle and bringing that to market. What are some of the things you've learned? Anything you'd do differently? What advice would you give?
Yeah, I think.
Just small questions to finish off, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Well, George Clooney, I asked him this question once about working with the same crew, and he's basically, had said, when you've got good people, you want to keep them with you. And I think that is definitely a massive lesson that I learned from him and being and producing this is that when you've got those dedicated core people like Anthony Czar and Derek Osborne who have stuck through with us thick and thin, look after people and treat them with respect, and they'll look after you. And never give up on your dream, no matter how hard it is. Tomorrow is another day.
Yeah, because it does. I know when after we'd done the premiere and stuff, there was a whole bunch of kind of like legal things that were kind of going on. Nothing like involved in how we made the film, but it was just that the sales agent that we originally did a distribution deal with went bankrupt, and that was like became a hugely complicated thing to find a resolve to, and it took a long time, and that became very, very stressful. And even through those really hard times, which became financially hard times and stuff, it's you still kind of plow through it, and it didn't put us off of thinking, well, I never want to do this again, because like Claire said, it is intoxicating when you are there and then you're engaging with someone that you've seen for X amount of years. It's it's incredible, and then you find yourself on the other side of it, and then you're sort of like in situations like this where we're talking about it. So in terms of the way that we went in, ideally it still would be great to have like one or two other people to come with us, but that obviously takes money, and you can kind of find, I wouldn't say it's easy is a different thing, but to kind of do a project and then sell it, then that's the way you get money. Whereas trying to get someone, even though we've done what we've done, say, well, if you can give us some money, then we can use that, and then we can go off and make the whole shoot a slightly easier kind of like thing to go through. But I think that what we learned in a filmmaking sense was the things that there's a lot more you can kind of do post that kind of filming editing stage, and we're in that now with Too Hot to Handle. It's the whole legal aspects of what you need to do to make your film compliant. If you had a load of money and you paid for all the footage and photos and stuff, then that's a different kind of animal. But we did everything under fair use, which is everything in the film has to have a purpose of being there. And I find it it's a shame. In some ways it does alter the edit slightly, and it's not always better. Most of the time it is, because at least you are keeping it.
Everything's in context.
Yeah, everything's in context, which is exactly what you want. And that's something we was able to learn from, because that's certainly in film school, you're not taught that. You're taught how to make something, but getting your film out there and seen by people, that is something else entirely. Yeah. And it's a very, very thorny world. We once went to Cannes years ago when we were doing the premiere scene stuff, and that was a chance to see the industry. And there's the off junior filmmaking thing, and this is the business side of the film industry, and that is cutthroat.
Yeah.
And they don't, all they want, you've got a product, right? Well, how's that product going to sell itself?
Yeah.
And even people we've had deals with that have all even those companies have sort of like long since gone now as well. But we was all set and primed to promote our film that we've spent years on, and they just want to take it, get it out there, and thank you very much, and that's it.
Yeah.
And you are in some cases, not all the time, some of them were amazing. The UK company we had were fantastic.
Yeah,
really worked very closely with us and got that product out that we wanted.
Yeah, the Blu-ray that you see, the nice one, is the one we were proud to release.
The US,
the US was completely. We had no control over that at all.
So I think that's the main thing that we kind of learned is like, learning about that side of it that you don't really get a chance to see, and there's not a lot of videos out there to tell you about how these things are done,
how show business works.
And I think it's different for every kind of project. So that was the big thing for us this time round was like, well, we know we can do this, and there's certain aspects, certain legal things you have to let other people do, because you've got to get that right, otherwise that's where you can sort of land yourself in trouble. But there was a lot, like the fair use assessment, the previous time took like 2 months
Mm.
at least. And this has all happened when we were in LA for that screening actually. And when we got the first assessment back, there was like 130 things that needed to be changed. Some needed completely re-editing in order to make it compliant. It was a task.
Yeah.
Wow.
It took a good 2 months to sort out. This time, I think it was done in about a week.
Yeah,
And there were
yeah.
like 9 things that were kind of only 2 things were like, this isn't fair use, needed to be changed. The other things were just kind of queries. And it's like, yeah, no problem, we can change that. And that was it. So we learned so much through that
Yeah.
process that we feel quite, we feel it's like
Yeah.
going off and doing seminars about it, because it's like it's this is a way you can do your film. It's not going to cost you the earth, but there will be a cost, but it's nowhere near what it'll cost if you needed to buy that footage.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other complicated issue, because if you apply to buy that footage and they say, well, we don't want you to have it, and they deny you the license, then you can't go fair use with it either. So you're really on the creek without a paddle.
Yeah.
So that was something that was a huge learning curve for us that we'll see once the film comes out. I'm sure something else. Hopefully, though, it'll be a much smoother process.
I'm sure it will, because there's so much you learn, isn't there? And every day's a school day when it comes to any kind of creative project. I guess
Absolutely.
my very last question is the most important one, and this is the big one. Ghostbusters 1 or Ghostbusters 2, which is better?
Oh, I'm gonna have to say Ghostbusters 1, as much as I love both films, but that was the film that has stuck with me since I was that 13, 14-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say I do love both of them. I remember queuing
Yeah.
for Ghostbusters 2. I had the flu. I've been off school, I think, so I was feeling particularly nervous on that Friday, I think it was. And I was with some friends and with his brother, and his brother's being a real pain. And I just riddled with flu. I just wasn't in the mood. I just want to get in the film. I'm going to see the film and don't disturb me in the film. But there's something about Ghostbusters. You wouldn't have Ghostbusters 2 if you didn't have such a good film with Ghostbusters. I remember actually in Kurt Fuller, we were chatting with him about it when we interviewed him for for Ghostbusters 2 doc, and he said it very well that you can't, Ghostbusters, like if you've done something that's 100%, you can't make something that's also 100% or 110. So it's going to be like, it's still a great film, but
Yeah.
it's never going to be that 100% of the first one. It's like 98% or something. And that's where I feel like Ghostbusters 2 is.
Yeah.
And I love it. It has its kind of faults, but Ghostbusters is something I can't sit and think, well, I love it. So it'll always be the first one for me. I think it's got a unique look and feel that was never replicated again, certainly in any of the other films that they've made since. So yeah.
And for me, it's always Ghostbusters 2, because that was my introduction to Ghostbusters. That was where the love affair began,
Yeah.
and that is my favorite film of all time. And I'm so excited to see you give the same treatment that you gave to number 1 to number 2.
You won't be disappointed.
We will talk again, but for now, I'm just very grateful to you both for joining me today. We have lots of little mystery thumbs up that keep popping up on our screen.
Because it's like sitting there and I'm realizing, like, see you soon.
That's enough one. Really lovely to see you both. Thank you. I'm just going to get one last plug. Cleaning Up the Town, remembering Ghostbusters. We get fireworks now. It's all happening.
It's just, that's how exciting it all is. So 2 thumbs up is fireworks.
Anthony and Claire Bueno, thank you so much for joining me on Good Journeys today.
Thank you, Ben.
very much for having us. Oh, look at it. It's just like, you didn't have to go to the expense of getting the fireworks out. Really.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys.